Thank you. Okay. So to people who are just joining, we're just going to make a start so that we're not going too far behind in terms of timing. So I'll start with my opening remarks. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Councillor Katie Dye, and I will be chairing today's meeting. At this point, I would like to clarify that whilst this meeting is being webcast live to enable public access, it's not being held as a public meeting in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972. As such, it is a remote consultative meeting of the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. The consultative status of today's meeting means that some of the usual formalities will not take place at the start of the meeting. This also means that the committee will not be in a position to take any formal decisions, and any proposed actions that do require formal ratification will be referred to the next formal public meeting of the committee for approval. Please can I remind members to turn their microphones to mute when they are not speaking, and to use the hand raising function to indicate that they would like to speak as we move through the agenda. And can I also ask, please, if it's possible for you to keep your camera on? I think that makes for a better meeting, and it's better for our visitors who are going to speak to us and our observers if they can see that we're actually here. I appreciate that if you have connection problems, then that's not always possible, but if it is possible, please can you do that? Okay, so can I start by asking members to introduce themselves in turn, and we'll start with Councillor Anderson.
Councillor Barry Anderson, Adlan Wharfdale Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden.
Councillor Dunn, Bowden, Roundhay Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Downs.
Councillor Rick Downs, Otley Eden Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Afternoon, yeah, Councillor Foster for Ardsley and Robin Hood.
Thank you. Councillor Hanan.
Afternoon, everybody. Councillor for Headingley and High Park.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington.
Councillor Harrington, Wetherby Ward.
Thank you. Councillor McCluskey.
McCluskey, Farnley and Wortley Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Hi there, Councillor Oliver Newton, Morley South Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Rafiq. Councillor Shazad.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Mohammed Shazad from the Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Good afternoon, Councillor Eleanor Thompson, Guiseley and Rawdon Wood. Sorry.
Councillor Thompson is in the same room as me, so I was trying to make it not echo, but I failed drastically there. I'll try and do better as the meeting moves on. Thank you. Councillor Tudor. Okay, thank you very much. And I am aware that some members will need to leave and come back, hopefully, for the last part of the meeting. Oh, it looks like we've got Councillor Stables with us. If you can hear us, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Councillor Penny Stables. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, I'm from Wetherby Ward.
Super, thank you very much. Okay, and now can the officers present please introduce themselves? So, Polly.
Good afternoon, Polly Kirk, Chief Officer for Climate, Energy and Green Spaces.
Thank you. Do we have Chad?
He's just finishing at another meeting, I believe.
Super, thank you. So, Rachel?
Rachel Wainwright, Policy Officer, Climate, Energy and Green Spaces team.
Thank you. Cassie?
Good afternoon, I'm Cassie Sivapalan, Governance Services, and I'm the clerk to this committee.
Thank you. And Helen?
Good afternoon, I'm Helen Gray. I'm also from Governance Services and I'm just here to support today.
Super, thank you. And do we have Victoria?
Actually, I'm here for Victoria. If you meant Victoria Eaton, it's Anna Frierson here instead of Victoria.
Instead of Victoria?
Yes.
So is Victoria not joining us?
No, I'm doing the presentation instead.
Okay, thank you very much. And do we have Eve yet? Not yet. And do we have Fiona?
Hi, good afternoon. It's Fiona Bolam, Head of Economic Policy.
Hi, thank you, Fiona. Is there anybody who I haven't asked to introduce themselves yet? Hi, Anna.
Well, I suppose I didn't say who I was, I realised when I butted in earlier. Hi everyone, I'm Anna Friss and I'm Consultant in Public Health Chief Officer for Healthy Living, and also cover the remit of climate change for public health, and I'm here on behalf of Victoria Eaton.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, well, you're all very welcome. Let's go on to Cassie then, please, if you want to start with the first items.
Thank you, Chair. Under item number 1, we have an apology from Councillor Carlisle and from Councillor Carlisle. And on the behalf of Councillor Carlisle, we have Councillor Stables. Can I ask members if there's any interest to declare? I take that as not. So should we move on to the notes of the previous meeting, Chair?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Cassie. So what I'm going to do, as always, is go through them, and if you would like to raise any matters that you would like to correct or any matters arising as we go, I'll go through them page by page and I'll keep an eye out for anybody wanting to come in. So first, we're starting with page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. And page 11. Okay, so I'm going to assume we're all happy to agree those as a true record. Thank you very much. Before we move on, Rachel, are you now able to hear us?
I am, Chair, yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now on to item 4, which is open forum, and we have 2 people who are going to contribute to open forum. Each contribution has 5 minutes to address us. So are we going to start with Denise, Rachel?
Yes, Chair. So I'm reading a statement out, just a short statement on behalf of Denise, who is a Leeds resident. So her short statement, if you just bear with me a second. So on behalf of Denise Gaines Marsden, she has asked me to say, I'd like to reiterate the possibility of making Leeds Centre buildings into rooftop wildflower gardens. If we decide to do this, remember all insects like to fly in straight lines, thus we can get them to pollinate and to survive and grow should we plan aerial paths across the city. Once started, these gardens will need the minimum of follow-up, much like those patches of ground land which we have already started on. So that's the end of the statement, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel. And our second contribution is going to come from Phil. Do we have Phil with us on the call?
Yes, you do. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, welcome to the meeting. You've got 5 minutes if you'd like that to
okay.
The meeting.
I'll be short and to the point then, if I may. It's just a suggestion. I suspect people think I'm being totally naive. A recent meeting of the Boston Spa, Weatherby and Villagers Green Group, and Penny Stables knows of me. One of the things was how can we as a community be not only saving energy, but contributing to energy, etc. And it just got me thinking, because having read the details and update on the Leeds flood alleviation scheme, it mentions how councils all the way along the River Aire have been working together to hopefully make sure that any other floods in the future are 1 in 100 years sort of situations. And I'm just looking at an ordnance survey map the other day, and this thought came to me, because from Barden Towers down to Harrogate Road, crossing on the A61 over the wharf, there are 10 weirs. There are another 4 weirs from Wetherby to Tadcaster. And if you look at the River Aire, from Kirkstall Abbey down to the confluence with the Calder, there are 9 weirs. And from Wakefield to the same confluence, there's another 3. So in total, just in my sort of simple math, there's 26 weirs that are actually in situations there. And I know from reading background details, there's a mill at Burley and Wharfdale that is using one of the weirs to generate hydroelectric power. And there's also the weir at Linton near Grassington that is generating power. I think that's been going since 2002. So just me, I'm being very naive, I'm sure, and there'll be people thinking, oh, what a silly thing. But if there are just that amount of weirs available in that on just 2-3 rivers, not even going right the way back to the source, because I'm sure there'll be further. I know 2 people, one who's looked at it at Knaresborough and one who's looked at it at the Boston Spa, and looking at just one unit in isolation to generate hydroelectric power, and both have said it is just not economically feasible. Now, anybody producing anything, be it hydroelectric or anything, the more they're producing, the cheaper the rates. But in this emergency, it just strikes me that there's a resource there that was developed for power all those years ago. Is there no way that there could be coordination between lots of different councils? Because we're all trying to do, also the councils, you're all trying to do the same, and that sort of help with this energy climate crisis. And I just thought, surely there's something that might be a possibility of, if nothing else, looking into, unless it's already being looked into and it's considered a complete flop and too costly. That was all. I just couldn't believe how many weirs there are just on the Aire, the Wharf, and the Calder on a little bit of the map that I looked at. And I just wondered whether it's something that has been considered already, and people have just said, "Oh, that's pie in the sky." That was all. I just find it's there's something there, and as I say, there's a mill in Burley and Wharfdale that is using one of the weir there to generate power, etc. That's all it is, and short and sweet. Hopefully, it's less than 5 minutes.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for raising those points. And thank you also to Rachel, who read out Denise's points. So as always, we will look into the points that you've raised, and you will receive a response from the committee. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Okay, so whilst we're still on open forum, I just want to report back to the committee on a couple of previous contributions. So you may remember that John Illingworth spoke to us at the last meeting. We've sent a response to him and received one back as well. So his points are being looked into. And the other one, which I think Councillor Carlisle raised at the last meeting, was the item that we had some time ago on plastic pitches. And I want to start by saying a huge thank you to officers who've been looking into this extremely complicated topic and doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes on it. A response has been sent out, which I think has been circulated to yourselves. However, I think it only went out this morning, so you are more than forgiven if you haven't had a time to look through it. But I wanted to put it before you today because there are 2 things that I'm asking of you that are raised in that response. One of which is that DEFRA are undertaking an evidence project, which is a piece of work they've commissioned to look into this issue as part of emissions of microplastics. And I would like your permission as a committee to write to DEFRA regarding this, because one of the things that I think it's important to maintain is the current level of environmental policy, and I don't want us to, as a country, kind of slip below the standards that were there as part of the EU. The EU has looked at adopting measures which are going to take a while to bring in, but they are adopting measures to restrict microplastics. So do I have your permission to right to that, I will also ask permission from exec board, but if nobody else is in disagreement, then that's super. Thank you very much. And then the other thing is that I think we should bring this issue back to a future SEAC once that piece of work has been concluded, so we can look and then see what recommendations we as a committee would like to make in terms of things that we think the council ought to be doing. So do I have your permission to bring that back to a future SEAC as well? Okay, thank you very much. Can those be noted, please? Those 2 recommendations for the minutes. Thank you. Okay, so that is open forum, and that now brings us to item 5, which is directors update. So just a reminder, we invite all the directors as a rolling programme to come and talk to us about their work regarding climate emergency. Please listen with interest, and you are very welcome to bring any questions once Anna has finished. So thank you very much, Anna. It's over to you.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen, hopefully successfully. There's always a bit of a right. I am struggling now. I don't use Zoom that much, and I cannot work out how to do it. Share screen, and then any tips from anyone? I can't see where my presentation is.
Can you see a stack of stuff on your screen that it is potentially available to share? Because I think that's what.
Yes, but the problem is it's not the presentation which I'd lined up ready. So just.
Any technical advice from anybody available?
Sorry.
Technical advice is if you send the presentation over to whoever the host is, they could probably share it for you.
That sounds like a good plan because it's not working the other way. Right, I'm sorry about this. I will do that immediately. Who shall I send it to? Helen?
No, I'll just send you the.
Sorry, Cassie, I didn't catch that.
Helen, do you want me to send it to you?
You can. I'm not the host though, so I'll give it a try. I don't think I'll be able to share.
Anna, if you want to send it to me as well, I can have a go and see if I can share for you. If it doesn't work, going over to Helen.
Thanks. Sorry
Send
about
it
this.
to me first. Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona.
I'm just going to send you the name of the host so you can send it to them if you want to.
Thank you. Right, shall I just start in the meantime? I have sent it to Fiona. I'm really sorry about that. I don't know. I really thought I'd got it all lined up. Clearly not. Shall I just start while hopefully Fiona is looking at the presentation that I've just sent.
Yeah, well, why not? Yes, thank you. And then if you don't get anything, then if you can just chip in and we'll.
Sorry, it's really frustrating. So I'm just going to talk through the progress against the 6 priorities that Public Health identified since Victoria came. I think it was last November. I think she set out our approach, and I'll just describe the progress we've made in the last 11 months or so. I know you wanted an update on corporate travel, so I've just tried to just pull something together for that, and there's just a few other activities of note I was going to mention. Oh, brilliant, Fiona. Thank you. You're a star. I owe you a coffee and more, probably. Could you go on to the first slide? Sorry.
Just give me 1 sec. I'm putting it on full screen for everybody.
Fabulous, thank you. So just to remind you, I know when Victoria came last year, we put a lot of thought into our approach around climate change, and we wanted to make sure that we selected priorities that made the biggest positive impact on health and reducing inequalities. So we spent some time doing that, and hopefully you'll remember that we came up with 6 priority areas: air quality, energy efficient homes, food, active travel, extreme weather, and changing disease risks. So I will just go through each of those. There's quite a lot of information, so I'm just going to pull out some highlights because we'll be here all afternoon, I'm afraid, in a good way, because obviously we're doing lots and lots of stuff. So I'll just quickly talk first about air quality, which is the first priority on there. Obviously, public health support the overall approach to air quality through the Council Strategy and Action Plan. We've established an air quality and health group, which there'll be some people around the table here attend, and that's to oversee the relevant actions for air quality and health. One of the biggest developments has been the publishing of the health needs assessment around air pollution and health, which is available for people who want to see that. We do a series of training around air pollution and health, particularly looking at what we call the wider public health workforce. So that's anyone who has a contribution to make around public health. So it could be a teacher, it could be a health visitor. So they're not directly employed by public health, but we provide a lot of training because we recognise the impact that huge workforce can have. So we've been doing some work around raising awareness around air pollution and health with that group of professionals. There's a new focus which the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, asked for around indoor air pollution. So that's a new focus for us, and that's early days. So there's a couple of actions I've listed on the slide, but basically looking at the owners and operators of private buildings and public spaces. So what they can do around promoting good indoor air quality, and also using monitoring devices, and again using training because lots of people don't think about that. So it's just early days, and again developing some resources to populations that we know are most at risk. So you imagine people with things like respiratory disease, etc. Could you move on, Fiona? Thank you. You're a great assistant. Secondly, energy efficient homes. So Public Health Commission, an organisation to deliver the Home Plus scheme, and that's very much about supporting people on low incomes, more vulnerable households with improvements to their homes. So it could be servicing heating appliances, fixing drafts, energy efficient lighting installation. And there's some really impressive statistics, I think, for that service over the last 12 months. I think there was 1,300 referrals a month, which is a heck of a lot. And some stats on there about the numbers of households that have been assisted to reduce their fuel poverty. And it's very much focused on clients that live in the 10% most deprived wards of Leeds. And there's some work, oh, sorry, I'm still going Fiona on that one. Cheers. So there's some future work there because I think we want to really improve the reach of that service. So although we are reaching people in deprived Leeds, we really want to make sure that we're looking at the residents that don't necessarily geographically live in those areas but still have a need, particularly younger families, for example, and also those from culturally diverse backgrounds. Then there's the energy performance certificate work, and that has now been pulled into the Marmot City work programs, which are basically bringing together health inequalities and energy efficiency. So that's been sort of pulled under that work stream. At the moment, we're working with Wixer to map where the poor ratings are and actually lay them over the health outcomes to obviously to see the correlation, and then we can better target funding to address these issues. Thanks, Fiona. I'm ready now. Food. So as with air quality, we've got a food strategy for the city, and public health contributes to that work, particularly around the health and wellbeing element, which has a real focus on creating a more sustainable food system. There's lots of actions in the plans that relate to climate change. I've just pulled out a few there. Working with spatial planning colleagues to look at what actions we could take around using planning levers around food. So there's lots of healthy eating advice that we deliver, and a lot of professionals across the city deliver. Actually, how much of those that training includes advice around plant-based options, for example. And again, evaluation toolkit around to support the food hubs in terms of contributing to sustainability, and particularly the food security agenda is particularly important with the cost of living crisis. Next one, please, Fiona. Thank you. Active travel. I've recently been talking to Gary Bartlett and colleagues about the Vision Zero strategy, which is obviously about reducing road deaths, but a big link with active travel. So that's a kind of future area that we want to look at in more detail. We've got a very specific project which has received significant investment from the Department of Transport, which is a pilot in Bermontoft, Hare Hills and Richmond Hill. And it's about trying to link active travel options with social prescribing, so involving primary care. It is obviously aimed at increasing physical activity, and particularly through cycling and walking, but also is looking at the infrastructure in the area. So it's working closely with transport colleagues and communities to actually identify what are the barriers to them being more active and walking and cycling, and what we can do about them, and working together with the community around some co-production ideas. Can I move it on, please, Fiona? So some really practical examples of things that are coming out of that pilot, and I know people keep saying, can we roll it out across the city? We've got investment for this area. This is very much trying it out, and yes, of course, we want to broaden it out, but this is early days. So I hope the things that come out of it can be deployed in other areas. So there's, I mean, most people I hope have heard of the Walk It, Ride It campaign, so very much using that in the area. Looking at the physical and social environment, again, very much for communities. What can we do to encourage people to walk and cycle? Urban trails, lots of activities to just support people to walk and you know, increase people's confidence. So it's not just about equipment, it's things like buddy programs. Learn to ride. So again, we've got a number of learn to ride cycle providers in the area. We've got bike libraries. We provide training, but also trying to link up with the idea of active travel and supporting people to get to employment and jobs. Thanks, Fiona. Extreme weather. So actually, this is just a reminder of the slide. So I suppose people tend to focus quite a lot on winter with the health service and the issues that arise from infections, etc. But it's very much about summer with the increased heat that we've seen over the last few months and years. So it's both. So Public Health has an extreme weather group, which produces plans for both those seasons and starts planning very, very early, as you can imagine. Next slide, please, Fiona. So there's a very detailed action plan, which looks at a whole host of actions around weather-related diseases, infections and ill health across Leeds. And as with all of our work, there's a particular focus on inequalities and supporting those people who are particularly vulnerable, for example, through frailty, to poor health during adverse weather, hot or cold. And a range of mitigation measures against health impacts of those. And it's been particularly made difficult through the cost of living crisis, of course. And I have some more detail I can share. There's so many detailed actions. I didn't really want to go into lots. I could be here all afternoon, but I can circulate some further information if people are interested in that. Next slide, please. So changing disease risks. So health protection, we have a health protection team within public health in the council, but we also work with the UK Health Security Agency. And that's particularly to monitor disease and manage outbreaks of communicable disease. We all know what happened a few years ago, and this was deployed to great effect locally in terms of managing COVID and the impact on communities, and then rolling out the vaccination programme. It's obviously not just ourselves that work on this. We work with the full health system across the response to outbreaks of disease, and there's always new things popping up that we have to keep an eye on. For instance, we've got to always be on alert for avian flu and the new variants of COVID. So that's a very quick rattle through the 6 priority areas. I've got some more detail on each of them. I know you asked about the corporate travel plan. Now, the nature of public health and the way we work is we don't have a lot of business travel, but I did talk to our business team, and as expected, our business travel has significantly reduced through hybrid working patterns following COVID, and that still remains low. I haven't got the actual figure because you can imagine how busy they are with finance at the moment. But if you wanted to see the reduction, I'm sure we could get that in a few weeks' time. We very much promote active travel between sites, but also for commutes. And we do have a lot of staff that have taken up the electric car scheme and also cycle to work. And final slide, please, Fiona. So I mentioned at the chair's brief that public health are keen to just keep assessing what we're doing. Is there anything we can do better? Is there any gaps that we need to fill? And I say, because we've developed this new approach, we've been running with it for about a year. And I have come across an audit tool, which we use audit quite a bit across public health. We thought we would just use that to assess ourselves against about 10. It's quite a checklist approach, but it's very much just assessing ourselves and being able to benchmark ourselves against other areas. So that's, we hope to do that later this year. As I said, I've been talking to Gary Bartlett and colleagues about how we can link the active travel work to the Vision Zero plan. And the Association of Directors of Public Health, Yorkshire and the Humber, have developed a climate change narrative document, which I can share the link for it. It's very much about equipping public health across the region to take a smart approach to climate change. And it's a really, really great resource. It's just been launched a few weeks ago. So I just wanted to point that out. So hopefully after a slightly false start, and thank you Fiona for rescuing me, I've quickly rattled through which roughly the approach we're taking and a bit of progress against each area. I say I've got wadges of information about each priority which I can share because I'm conscious I haven't gone into too much detail there.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you Fiona for assisting. Can I ask you to raise your electronic hand, members, if you have any questions? Okay, I don't see any at the moment. I was just going to ask Councillor Thompson to shut that door, but that'd be super if you could. I think they're going. Sorry, we had some people coming in. Councillor Stables, was that a hand going up?
Yeah, thank you. It was just a query about, this is a strange one, but about toilets, because in the prioritising active and safe transport, it was mentioned about having access to places of rest and toilets. So I was just wondering whether there was a plan to increase the number of public toilets across the Leeds area.
Well, the pilot is within a locality, obviously, at the moment, Bermontoffs, Hales, Richmond Hill. So there's no plans at the moment to go any further than that at this point. This is very much about what do we need in that local area. So I no, in terms of there's the short answer, but it's definitely part of the approach because it's it's seen as an important as you I'm sure from highlighting you also think in terms of making sure that people can walk and have the facilities they need. I don't know if it's going to increase the numbers. I really don't at this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I think actually that is a barrier in terms of, as I think you've agreed, in terms of active travel. So particularly with the older population, people are worried to go too far in case there aren't any public toilets. So I think it would actually increase our participation of active travel across the Leeds area if we had more public toilets.
Yeah, I'll say you're probably pleased to see that it's in there. Definitely a consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a hugely important question. I really do. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on. Okay, Councillor Foster.
Hiya, thanks for the presentation. I think somewhere in there you talked about increase use of active travel and electric cars. I think that's for the City Council staff. Do you have any numbers to back that up?
No, basically. I know we definitely noticed the number of applications going through from our staff, but I mean we're quite a small staff group, but definitely increased. We've noticed that staff have been taking up the offer of the scheme.
So is that something that you will do eventually, collate data to back up that?
I assume it'll be done corporately because it's a corporate scheme.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we would definitely be interested in getting that kind of data back to ourselves. Anybody else got any questions? Okay, so can I just come in with one about the pilot that you were looking at, the active travel?
Mm-hmm.
What plans are there to evaluate that? Because again, that's something that if we get a good uptake from it, would be really good to be able to look at lessons we can learn and move across the city.
Yeah, we've there was money built into the funding from the Department of Transport, so there's a full evaluation going on alongside the work. So that work was tendered out.
And can I ask what's the timescale for that? I think you did say, but
it's 2022 to 2025.
Okay, so 2022 to 25. So that's something that we could look at. It'd be good,
Yeah,
be good
definitely.
to look at as a committee when that evaluation comes through for certain.
Yeah, and I think probably maybe in the next year or so, I'm sure someone would come from the team. I say it's not just public health. We work very much with transport colleagues and primary care in that area. So I'm sure the team would like to come out and tell you more about the work.
That would be
it's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would be really interested in that, because I know that's something in my own ward. We're looking at developing an active travel hub, and I don't really know where the funding comes from, whether that's come from external sources, but it's certainly something that we're keen on, and I think a lot of other members would be too. And it's a win-win, really, isn't it, in terms of cost of living and climate change,
and I think
as well as people's health.
The feature of this work is very much about it's about working with the community and helping us to identify what's going on and what would work for them, which is really important.
Super. Okay, so just looking at some things that I jotted down that it would be good to follow up on. So that's the first thing. I mean, if you have got somebody from the team that would come out at a later date and either talk to the main meeting or to one of our working groups about that, specifically about that pilot, I think that would be really helpful. The other thing is, you said you had information that you could circulate in more detail. I think that would be good. We can then look at, and the document you mentioned, the Yorks and Humber document, that would be good.
Send a link to that. Yeah,
circulate too. And then another thing I think it would be nice for us to look at in the future, again, possibly as one of our working groups, is the work that you talked about on the audit tool. Once you've had a chance to complete that, I think that's a really interesting piece of work for us to look at, and I'm sure that we could fit that into a work programme of one of the working groups somewhere. So that would be great, if that's okay. Thank you very much. Any last comments and questions from anybody? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the presentation. Oh, was that a hand, Councillor Stables, or a question?
Yeah, can I just add another comment before Anna goes? So it was, well, a question really. It was just something I've thought of. In terms of the promoting energy efficient homes, clearly there's quite a lot going on currently within the more deprived areas of the city, which is obviously the right place to start. Mm-hmm. But looking forward in terms of accelerating our the reduction in energy use across the city, is it something? Are we looking at a way of encouraging other households to reduce their energy? Are there projects underway to do that?
I think Polly might be best placed to answer that, because this is a fairly small scale health focused service. So it has a very specific purpose. That sounds more like a broader approach, which I think I'm putting Polly on the spot, but I think it might be better for Polly to answer that.
Yeah,
she's around.
That's fine, not a problem. So there's a number of different things going on. We've got different funding streams that are targeted towards houses where there's probably more fuel poverty type issues or lower income, or in certain areas of the city. So there's a funding stream that's just being worked up now, and we'll come back with more details to the committee at a later date to explain how that will be rolled out. The kind of more general piece of work that we've been doing is looking at kind of a one-stop shop, which is working with people like Lloyds and Octopus, and that's for people who actually want to make their own investment into the house, but actually there are lots of barriers to it. They don't know what they need to do. They don't know how to do it. They don't know what contractors to use. So we've been working. We got funding through the GHFA, and I would have said what that stood for, but my mind's gone blank. Green Homes Funding Accelerator, I think, or Finance Accelerator, to develop that scheme up. we're just putting in a bid for a second sort of tranche of that funding. So we're looking really to work alongside the private sector. So we've got what we're calling a one-stop shop or one-stop centre. And it is just about identifying the barriers and helping people to overcome them. Because ultimately any householder can do it, could do it now if they wanted to, but people find it too difficult. And we've discussed in previous meetings about sometimes there are planning barriers that exist for some of the greener technologies that don't exist maybe for an oil boiler. So it's trying to work through all those different barriers and make sure Leeds is a place that is embracing new technology and making it easier for people to adopt if they want to. So thank you.
Thank you. So sorry, just a very quick follow-up. How would they access that in that the one-stop shops? How would they access that? Is there information that's out on it?
So there wouldn't at the moment because it's still under development, but there will be, when it's ready, there will be a big launch, and I'm sure we'll come back to this committee to give full details and be asking for help to help promote that. So, but it's under development. They're just recruiting various people to help that operate.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Polly. Anybody else got any last comments or questions before we let Anna go? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the things that you've said you'll either revisit with us or send to us. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about the presentation hiccup at the beginning.
Okay. All worked out fine in the end with a little bit of help. No problem.
Thanks to Fiona.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona, again. Appreciate that. Cheers. Thank you for preparing it, and thank you for your time. Appreciate that. And thank you for all the work you're doing. Super. Okay, thank you, everybody. Right, that moves us on to item 6, which is working group updates. So we haven't had a meeting of any of the 4 working groups since the last full SEAC, so we don't have anything to report on. I do, however, have 2 dates for you. So the infrastructure planning and buildings is confirmed for the 8th of November at 2 p.m. And is the community and business engagement one confirmed yet, Rachel, or is that still a
I believe it's still to be confirmed, pending sort of reviewing documents. I believe Chad's been in contact with Councillor Shazad, so we should have that very, very soon confirmed.
Okay, so that's due to be confirmed. I have it penciled in as the 6th of November at 9 o'clock, but that's subject to change. And then following on from that, I know a number of members of this committee have asked me about attending more than one of those working groups, and my answer is I would strongly encourage it. Please come to as many as you can. The slight confusion is that Rachel sent out an invitation some time ago asking people to sign up to be on various working groups, and so therefore if you haven't done that you won't receive an invitation. So can I ask, and I hope this is all right, Rachel, that if you would like to attend one of the 2 upcoming groups, that you drop Rachel an email and Rachel will send you the link. Is that okay, Rachel? Does that work as a strategy? So
that's fine. Either email me directly or to the climate emergency inbox. Either one's fine. I can obviously add people to the membership.
That would be brilliant. And then if we just keep reminding you of upcoming dates, then we can make sure that you get the information about them, because it would be a real shame for working groups to go ahead without members of the full SEAC committee knowing about them and wanting to come along. Okay, so Councillor Anderson.
I was going to say, certainly, hold on. Yeah, what I was going to say is, from my perspective, the one I'm at, I've got an open invitation to the one I chair, because you might think most of the time I talk a lot of boredom, but occasionally I do come up with a gem of interest. And so if you get notified automatically every time, you can then by all means come to any of mine. You don't have to give me notice, just turn up because I want more the merrier to come along so that we can get a more consensus view. The last time there was 3 of us debating. It was great time. Everybody got something to say, but I don't honestly think we could honestly say we spoke on behalf of this committee in terms of the conclusions we reached. So as far as I'm concerned, the one I'm chairing, I want all of you to come along and any other colleagues who are interested as well.
Absolutely, thank you. And I couldn't have put it better myself, because we had a fabulous discussion, and I think some really important points came out of that particular session. But yes, definitely the more the merrier. Councillor Downs.
Thank you. I just wonder whether it would be useful, and I certainly would appreciate it, if an invite was sent to all of them anyway, so that they're there in the diary. And if I'm available, even if I'm not on one, I will then attend. Because if it's in my diary, I can just click on the link or whatever and join. That would be very useful for me.
Thank you. Is that something we could do, Rachel? We could add, if people are in agreement, to all the invitations for the working groups, the people who are members of the SEAC full committee?
We can possibly moving forward doing that. I think we agreed at the start. The other reason we didn't have it at the start was because in previous years we've had often from all members, we used to get sort of quite a lot of emails asking to be, we started with a opt-out, sort of like invited everybody, but then we received a lot of emails from people saying they didn't want to receive the emails anymore. So this year we took the approach of an opt-in situation, but that's fine. If members of this main committee wish to be added to all future invitations, obviously that can be taken into consideration and added onto the list.
People nodding in agreement, because that would just be, it would just be adding the people who were on this call, wouldn't it? It's not, I mean, I agree with your point about all members. It wouldn't be adding any more than the dozen or so people that are here, some of whom might already be on that invitation for the meeting, but I think that would be, it'd be good in terms of increasing the attendance at them. Thank you very much. Anybody got anything else to add on the working groups? Okay, fabulous. Thank you very much. So that moves us on to our substantive item for today, which is item 7, and that's Eve. So do you want to start, Eve, with just giving us a brief summary of what you intend to do for your session?
Yes, of course. So hello, everybody. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Eve Roothouse. I'm Chief Officer for Culture and Economy at Leeds City Council. In this section, what we're going to do is do a bit of an overview of the new Inclusive Growth Strategy, which was launched towards the end of last month in September. And then we've got some guests with us from business representative groups and from business. One may have to, we're going to try and incorporate one of our colleagues, but she may have to leave because she is actually being called to speak to the UN, which I think is a fair enough reason. So we'll try and get to her before she has to leave. And then we have a colleague from the Combined Authority who will talk through the business support we provide to businesses through the Combined Authority before going into some questions, if that's okay, Chair.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, so and I'm going to attempt to share my screen, which hopefully will go smoothly. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? Everyone able to see that okay?
Yep, I can see that. And now we can see it full screen, so that's super.
That's fantastic. And my next challenge is to see whether the video plays and you can hear all your audio, because I'm going to be brave, because we've got a short video that just introduces the new Inclusive Growth Strategy. So here we go. Katie, wave at me if you can't hear the sound.
Can't hear any sound yet.
I don't know how I do that then.
Is it, apparently it's in sharing options that you can include sound.
Oh, where's sharing options?
I don't know. Councillor Thompson's telling me in the share.
Somewhere in the green.
Oh,
it should be with the share screen.
It should be in somewhere with the green box that says share screen. So I don't know whether it shows any options.
It doesn't. You know what? You can all watch it later rather than me trying to fiddle around. So we'll you'll be able to see the slide presentation later. So we'll just go to the next. There we go. So we'll move on, and I'll give you the context. So we had an inclusive growth strategy between 2018 and 2023, and that strategy was put in place because, having recovered strongly from the last recession in 2008-9, we saw that there was increasing inequalities in the city despite having a thriving economy. And sadly, that remains the case in 2023, as illustrated here on some of these graphs. So it's a sort of different set of data on each one, but a similar story. So we still have 22% of people in Leeds that live in poverty, which is around 180,000 people, and they live in neighbourhoods which tend to be around the city centre. We also have population growth, which is happening in those areas in the city. So there is a kind of generational impact on inequalities in the city as well, with young people disproportionately being impacted by poverty. And then when you look at COVID-19 vaccine take-up, you can see the dark colours in reverse, where in April 2022, there was a higher take-up in the outer areas of the city. Similarly, the mortality rate is impacted in the same way. Now, as elected members, I'm sure you see this information quite frequently. It's just a reminder as to why then we have recommitted to an economic strategy that's focused on inclusive growth, not just talking about growth for the economy in general, but more focusing instead on growth that will benefit everyone. So the new growth strategy reflects the changed kind of landscape since the council launched its first strategy. We keep the same themes: people, place and productivity, but instead of having 12 big ideas, we now have 9 big ideas. And if you've had a chance to look at the strategy, you'll see that whereas the 2018 to 23 strategy was quite silent on sustainability and net zero, this strategy has it underpinning throughout. So when you read through the strategy, you'll see that it really is prominent across our themes, which I'll just give a bit of an overview of now. So the key kind of ideas under people are around tackling poverty and inequality to improve people's lives, supporting people and businesses in a rapidly changing labour market, and making sure education and training meets local need. Now, the main areas in which we're delivering this main way in which we're delivering this change is through our future talent plan. And just drawing out the real specifics for SEAC, the Future Talent Plan has a very keen focus on green skills as one of the 3 sector focuses. So the Future Talent Plan identified digital, finance and professional services, and green skills and the transition to net zero as 3 areas that we needed to focus deeply on. So in relation to that, we now have a sector lead on net zero who is doing work to look at how we work across the city with our partners around understanding and developing the skills that we need to affect the transition to net zero and providing pathways into green jobs, because there's a huge amount of evidence that there is real potential in Leeds and West Yorkshire for jobs that will support net zero and grow and support our economy at the same time. We're also working to make sure that we can inspire talent about the opportunities that exist in a green economy. If you can imagine, if a parent advising a child doesn't know that a kind of a job looking after heat pumps is going to be a really valuable skill in the future as opposed to a gas engineer, and that's going to be a block for them doing that training in that space. So a lot of our work needs to be right through in terms of the careers advice support we do with schools, through to the work we do at major events at the arena, and the work we do with people that are furthest from the labour market and with employers, to make sure that everyone understands the opportunities that exist. Of course, when you've got a changing economy, upskilling and reskilling the existing workforce is also really important to make sure that people can take the opportunities that exist in new and emerging areas of the economy and move from some parts of the economy which will no longer be relevant in a net zero world. And we need to keep our eyes on that as we're working with employers and education providers. Moving into place, the three kind of big ideas in place are around investing in our places and transport to create a sustainable economy and greener future, maximising the potential of our city centre and local high streets, and connecting and strengthening our communities. So to just give some illustrations of how our work towards net zero sort of like kind of emerges through this as well. If you think about the work that we have underway, the flood alleviation scheme work in terms of our phase 2 around that activity is really important to ensuring the future of our economy and making sure that we can protect the city from flood and improve resilience. The district heating network is really important to support both businesses and residential to have a reliable form of heating. The work that's being done around net zero homes and the pioneering kind of design at situ, for example, in a climate innovation zone, it's really driving the future of what homes need to look like and creating those new jobs and those new supply chains in terms of the future build. Likewise, the work that's being led by Polly and colleagues around electric vehicles and the infrastructure we need for that, and the work across green spaces, all of these are really important from an economic perspective and through that lens in terms of making Leeds a great place to live, work and do business, and it makes complete sense to be focusing on them. In terms of productivity, the three big ideas that we outline here are around stimulating innovation, which drives and delivers measurable impact towards a healthier, a greener and a more inclusive future, helping businesses and organisations to become more productive and thrive in the face of change, and promoting Leeds as a global destination for people to visit, live, work, study and invest. So you'll notice that the overall vision for innovation, right there in the heart of it, is greener, in the sense of knowing that actually we need the support of the private sector and our universities and entrepreneurs to try and find the solutions that we need to be able to make the transition to net zero and to address the climate emergency and build resilience into our places. Equally, businesses are going to need to support to be able to respond to the changing economic landscape, and it's important that we have the right business support in place. So some of the things that, again, are kind of very specifically happening to support this productivity space, the Leeds Anchors Network, which has 14 of the largest organisations in the city, are now working together around how we can be more effective on that transition. We are looking at how we can future-proof and grow our businesses, and we'll hear more about that from the Combined Authority shortly. I've mentioned already about innovation, but there's also a huge amount of potential in Leeds to be a driver of green finance. So finance to support the transition, not just here in Leeds, but across the UK and globally, with the UK Infrastructure Bank being based here and a lot of expertise at the University of Leeds. And that actually also presents a fantastic chance to be really driving the economy of the future. The other kind of thing I wanted to sort of just touch on is, obviously, when you talk about kind of events like Light Night, for example, that we had last week, you can really bake in sustainability into your approach into some of those events, and that's exactly what we're doing now. So we're going for the relevant ISO standards on tourism and working with Leeds Hotels and Venues Association to achieve those standards around sustainable tourism. We're working on how we can reduce, achieve various standards on major events. So with the triathlon, when we last hosted that, we achieved gold standard with British Triathlon in terms of sustainability standard. Leeds 2023 have achieved some fantastic new ways of reducing the carbon footprint on events, which we're looking to learn from and build into our future approach. So I also just wanted to tackle that head on, because obviously when you talk about attracting people for major events, there's a natural assumption that, you know, could also be, you know, driving more carbon output. So how are we going to measure our progress on delivering the inclusive growth strategy? You, again, as councillors, hopefully you're familiar with the Leeds Social Progress Index. This is an index which we've been adopting over the past year or so, developing it for Leeds. And now it will be updated and a new version of it launched very shortly with even more kind of information. The Social Progress Index is there to complement figures around GVA, so gross value added, and more traditional economic measures. So we'll still look at employment numbers and we'll still look at GVA, but alongside that, we can also look at quality of life and a range of other measures to make sure that we're delivering growth that is inclusive and is addressing those kind of challenges and the basic human needs. Okay, chat, I cantered through that quite quickly, I'm mindful, partly because I know that I've got a guest who needs to leave quite soon. So I'm just going to move into that section straight away so that I don't lose her. So we have three guests with us today. We have Matti Yetta, who is from a digital company called CGI. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer there. I also have Mark Caskey from West and North Yorkshire Chamber, and Mark Goldstone from the CBI. Now, I've asked them all to do a short kind of presentation each to give you a view from the private sector about where private sector is at in terms of the economic opportunities and challenges around net zero relating to the strategy I've just outlined. And we'll go with Matti first, because she's the one that's got to go off to an important meeting. So Matti, over to you.
Thank you. Please do confirm when you can see my screen. Hopefully you can hear me.
You can just see me in duplicate at the moment, but I think, yeah, that's it.
Right, and I do apologize. I do need to drop off as I'm needing to present to the UN on some of these programs. But just a little bit about me. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for CGI. And prior to working for CGI, about a year and 6 months ago, I worked for the UK government as the head of sustainability there for 9 years, and the Scottish government for a few years, and prior to that I worked for the United Nations. What I did focus on today is about the SEEDS program, which hopefully should give you a flavor of some of the things we're doing around technology, research and innovation. SEEDS being sustainability, exploration and environmental data science, which is a program that we launched with the United Nations a little over 2 years ago to demonstrate the role of technology, science and innovation for driving sustainable outcomes and sustainability in the UK. Within the programs, we deliver many innovations and solutions around agriculture, smart agriculture, green finance, water management, new energy solutions, water pollution, and circular economy waste management, as well as on the more social side around violence against women and girls and other social value and social topics. Within the programs, we have several universities across the UK and internationally. The bulk majority are actually professors and doctors who are within the UK, from professors at Leicester University, Coventry, Loughborough, and we are working with a few professors and doctors in Leeds Uni and several other farmers as well, and professionals. The areas we are focused on within the programs are in the solutions of digital twins, which is really a solution and innovation that replicates a building. It replicates the earth. It replicates any object you want it to replicate in order to inform you about the challenges or to help you develop further and better plans for forecasting. So you can forecast when you're likely to have a water leak or a water pipe leak from buildings. You can forecast the earth, or you can forecast a part of the land and replicate that to inform you where you're likely going to have emissions or more waste. This is what this digital twin innovation solution is for. In the spaces of water pollution, we have been using satellite data. For example, in the area of the North Devon UNESCO biosphere, to actually identify where pollution is coming from three sources really. Point source, which is as a result of water companies that may have had a failure somewhere, or non-point source as a result of agriculture runoff, or transboundary pollution, which is as a result of water pollution being carried from one water system to another water. And we have several other innovations. But what I did want to share with you here on the screen really quickly is a research and a technology innovation we're using to map pollution around the UK. So as you can see here, that the dots are actually pollution. And they, the colors symbolize the different severities. Whilst this is a research that we're specifically asked to deliver the UNESCO Devon Biosphere by the Biosphere Devon Gov, we have learned a lot through this that we're able to apply to other areas where the Welsh government now want us to apply the same innovation. What you can see is pollution. The blue are the water courses and the rivers. This really dark blue here is actually soil moisture using satellite data, where we can tell how moist the soil is, which normally gives way in terms of where you're likely to see runoff. And the circle really symbolizes the area we've been asked to focus on. The lighter areas symbolize the areas where there's actual population and people live there. And so there's a lot of infrastructure there. These are just some of the trends and the patterns we're seeing. I won't go into detail, but for example, heavy rainfall corresponds with higher pollution in the area that we're looking at. And in some cases where we've got lower rainfall, but still higher pollution, that's been telling us that actually the water company may have been at fault here and therefore could have done more to prevent such incidents. Again, here are just some of the sensors. These are different types of technologies we're using. We've actually deployed sensors on the ground that are able to pick things like ammonia, phosphorus, phosphate, and other types of pollutants, and they're positioned strategically in the different water courses to be able to track, combined with the satellite data, which you're seeing, the green, land cover, agriculture management, we're able to pick up on all of that. Things like campsites, where the population is majority of the population in terms of infrastructure that's been built, as well as really beginning to play around with the technologies in the models such as infrared to really provide us with useful insights, including vegetation and so forth. I won't go into detail, but using AI and machine learning, we're able to pick up things like trends, patterns of what will likely occur over the next few years from 2022 to 2032 in order to be more proactive with the planning. We firmly believe that technology can actually provide really useful insights when it's deployed in the right way. And of course, we're starting to see different patterns from the Northwest region, Southeast, West Midlands. Of course, the area that we've been mostly focused on has been the southeast side, particularly the Devon side, which is the area where the UNESCO have asked us to do the research and to deploy the technologies through. Again, it's just to say that as an organization, we do a lot of work for the UK government and indeed for many companies nationwide and worldwide. You might have caught us on the BBC, on Sky News recently for this project, as well as other projects which we're deploying within different communities to empower communities and to demonstrate the role of technologies. And also just to highlight some high-level figures here, which basically is a research that showed that data can actually support 100% of their sustainable development goals. Artificial intelligence could support 50. Blockchain was identified to only support 25. These are showing you that the actual technologies that are deployed within communities at different rates and different paces. So it's not to say that 25% of blockchain is only deployed. That may be because the community might not really understand what blockchain is as a technology. Similarly, AI and things like the Internet of Things to help with better connectivity. And I won't go into detail on this, but it's just to say some figures that were also identified as to where technology could play a role. For example, 13% of emissions reductions could be realized by 2050 as a result of AI. 11% of emissions could be reduced as a result of human behavior supported by technology. So things like efficient bulbs and electric vehicles. And the EIE also estimated that 11% could be as a result of carbon capture and of course other renewable types of energy. I also wanted to quickly mention that CGI is one of the organizations behind the smart metering programs, and 59% of homes in the UK now have smart meters, and we are accelerating the rollout of this. As an organization, we deploy several technologies from smart meters, sensors, satellites, artificial intelligence, AI, and they indeed do have a role to play in communities and indeed strategy development and actually helping to realize sustainable outcomes and help support communities. Thank you. I'll stop there, and apologies, I've had to rush through.
Thanks, Matty. You've got off now right now?
Sorry?
Do you need to head off right now? Because I saw your meeting, you need to go.
I do need to head off.
Okay.
I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Matty. We'll maybe, if we've got questions, we can maybe follow them up later, because I know you and I are going to have a follow-up chat. So before we go on to the other presentations, the reason why I asked Matty is because the digital sector in Leeds is one of the fastest growing economies in the city. So it's, you know, growing at a rate faster than other areas. And I thought it was helpful to have a little bit of a case study from a digital business of some of the ways in which data and technology is actually being deployed to address the climate emergency and support the transition to net zero. Just before I kind of introduce our other two speakers, just to give a little bit of Leeds context around this as well. So we have some really exciting companies in Leeds beyond CGI who are working in this space in different ways. We have disruptors in the marketplace like Tread, who are producing the first banking card that tells you what your carbon footprint is as you spend, and also allows you to offset your carbon footprint. So for any of you that don't use them now, you might want to take a look at them. They're a great Leeds business looking to disrupt that space. We also have some incredible work that's happening through Professor Ian McClacker at the University of Leeds that you may have come across before, but is connecting into the innovation and the green finance space from an economic point of view. Increasingly, we're looking at how data about, similar to what Matty was saying, where you've got data about land use and flooding, you can potentially create new models for the mortgage industry in the future. Where you look at the nature of what types of houses should be built in different places and only allowing mortgages if certain types of housing are being met, particularly if they're in areas that are likely to be flooded, so that the housing that is built is resilient housing. So there's a lot of really interesting work that's being led through innovative companies and tech companies here in Leeds. So we'll perhaps come back to that in some of the questions, but we've got two different presentations for you now from two of our most important partners in the city from a business representative point of view. Confusingly, of course, we've had CGI and now it's CBI. I'm going to invite to speak, and I've also got two Marks. So it's Mark Goldston from the CBI who's going to present to us next. Mark.
Thank you. This is an example of blockchain, CGI, CBI, Mark and Mark. And so apologies in advance because I'm the boring policy person, followed by Mark, who's the more interesting policy person. But having to follow that presentation is going to be quite a challenge. But I just wanted to just some very brief points, if I may, and I'll probably drop in the chat a link to a document that we published in July about green growth, because we at the CBI, I think it's a massive opportunity to not just for the UK, but for the world, actually. But in terms of the business view on this whole agenda, incredibly supportive, actually. I know sometimes we, the private sector, are put in that nasty corporate black box, but actually there's a huge amount of wanting to get this over the line. So in terms of what we hear, so I'll bring it into three broad areas. What is it businesses need and what can government do? And then the final bit on delivery. So in terms of what businesses need, just what we need is clear and stable policy environment. That will build the confidence that businesses need to invest. I might go a whole day without mentioning HS2, but sorry, just mentioned it. So that's what we need. And if we've got that stable policy environment, businesses will invest. So that's the first point I wanted to make. And accelerate major policy decisions to stimulate green markets on the supply and demand side. Again, there's a lot more about that in the report I'll share with you if you're interested. But what can government do? And I think what we need is, I mean, financial incentives will help, and they don't necessarily need to be handouts from government. They could be tax breaks, they could be policies that incentivize the right sort of investment into green technology. So one of the suggestions we're saying is review the tax system. Another one would be, actually, we probably ought to think about how do we replace the income lost from road tax and things like that, and other fossil fuel taxes. We probably need to start thinking about that now as a country. And then plan the evolution of the pricing support mechanism. Some of you might be familiar with the contract for difference, which is used in particularly things like offshore wind projects. Actually a Leeds invention, by the way. Adelshaw Gollards in Leeds invented that. So that's one thing we've shared with the rest of the country. And then in terms of delivery, so there's a bunch of things government can do to make this happen. And again, it probably wouldn't be a day in policy without mentioning skills, green skills. Eve mentioned it earlier, it was good to hear that. Really important that we make sure young people know what the future opportunities look like. So again, I would wholly support good careers advice into schools. The other area, which again, probably needs a bit of central and local government, is planning reform. Again, probably not a day goes by when that doesn't come up in a conversation with businesses. As a throwaway stat, 40% of all major infrastructure projects have been delayed in the planning system since 2017, 40%. And then linked very closely to that is the process for connectivity to the grid. And it's a massive problem. At the moment, you put in an application and you just join the queue. There's no looking at whether that's a viable project or whether it's got the funding or whether it's deliverable. You just go in the queue. So again, we probably need that looking at, and government could do something about that, and indeed has had those recommendations in the Windsor review, which was shared with government recently. So I'll probably pause there if that's okay, and I'll drop the report into the chat if people want to read it. Happy to pick up in questions, happy to pick up offline if that would help people. My 5 minutes, Eve.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Mark. As a bit of an overview. So then now we're going to hear from Mark Caskey, who's from Western North Yorkshire Chamber.
Good afternoon. Is everyone hearing me okay? I'm seeing nods, which is always encouraging. Thanks very much. I'll give an overview as well, and I'll try and do something just to kind of explain a bit of a difference between, although Mark and I shared the same Christian name and same affection and love for the region and its business community, we've got quite different organisations. We both represent business, but the chambers are slightly different in that we represent all employers. So that's colleges and councils, etc. Just so there's a bit of a differentiation there. As mentioned, we represent all employers, but that ranges from one-man bands to multinationals. However, the vast majority of those are very small employers. Vast majority of them are below 50 people. In fact, the bulk of it is people that are less than 10 employees or less, which is broadly reflective of the greater economy. Looking at our own Chamber of Commerce research, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is, of course, that there's a real willingness to support decarbonisation and improved efficiency. In fact, 78% of firms say they're actually taking action to achieve both of these things, both reducing carbon and improving efficiency. The bad news is just perception. 1 in 10 businesses don't understand what net zero actually means. I don't think that's reflective of business leaders or entrepreneurs being uninformed. I think if you went out in the street and asked the next 50 people that came past you what does net zero means, I think the tally would be even lower. The language is often very esoteric. I don't think we help ourselves as a region or a nation by the way we go about this. It suddenly becomes very, very complicated, but what we're actually trying to achieve is relatively simple. So I'd kind of ask if that could be borne in mind. This will come as no surprise to anyone on the call, but when it comes to actually applying business activities to achieving reduced carbon and improved efficiency, the gulf between larger employers and smaller employers is vast. 4 in 5 FTSE 100 firms have got committed active net zero programs in place with staffers overseeing it. When you get down to the smaller end of things, it's just not even close to that. Just 26% of SMEs, that's less than 50 employees, actually even measure their emissions full stop. If you don't measure something, you can't change it. So that's the situation we're in. We've got targets nationally that we want to see as a Chamber of Commerce, and Mark has very much touched on the importance of transforming the grid. We're not going to transform this if the actual infrastructure isn't altered along with it. We need the capacity and the flexibility to get to net zero. At the moment, the national grid will not allow us to achieve this. There was a recommendation from the Electricity Networks Commissioner not so long ago that we should commit to a dramatic upgrading of the capacity of the grid, and we would like to see that brought into place with legislation. And then we need to start talking about future energy. We hear a lot about sustainable energy, which we're massive supporters of, but we also need long-term plan for things like hydrogen and nuclear. Small modular nuclear reactors is something that Yorkshire's very good at and can lead upon. Equally, I know that there's plans, or pilots, I should say, all the way in the Leeds region for looking at hydrogen, along with some parts of the northeast. There's a kind of a presumption that market forces will take care of a lot of this. That's kind of true, but not really. My daughter is always banging on me that I need to get a Tesla because it's the coolest car to drive. She's not really taking into account how much I earn for a living. But things like sustainable fashion are becoming much more popular, and solar panels are becoming more and more affordable to get as well. There's great examples of good projects happening in the air. I was talking to York St John University recently. Their investment's going to take 82 tons of CO2 each year out of the atmosphere, and that'll be an 80% reduction in their emissions over the next 25 years. There's tons of support for businesses out there, but I just again would hark back to my earlier point about it being quite esoteric and not really kind of up for what the scale of the challenge is. I'll give you one example of that is that WICA, West Yorkshire Combined Authority, has got a business sustainability support group, which we massively welcome. It will give individual businesses help on where they can achieve efficiencies, but it's only getting funded to the tune of £10 million. That's not WICA being undedicated or uninformed of the scale of the challenge. That's what they can afford from their relatively modest budget. Until this is properly backed from central governments, given devolved areas the tools and the powers they need to help with this, we're not going to get to where we need to. I'm sure Mark would join me on this as well. There's a lot of targets knocking around. We're talking about Leeds specifically here. Leeds City Council, West Yorkshire Combined Authority and the government nationally have all got targets for net zero. Not great if we're all trying to head to the same direction, but going in different directions. I think we could do with a bit more synergy of direction on that. Businesses need more than direction and targets. They need confidence. I'm Mark brought up the issue of HS2, which I can't tell you how damaging that's been to business confidence in the region. That's been incredibly disappointing for business leaders of all sizes and shapes. They don't need to hear more hectoring from politicians. We've had the goalposts on net zero move just in the last few weeks. These are long-term structural frameworks that businesses base their investment decisions on, and if they get changed at a few focus groups ahead of a party conference, that's massively damaging to confidence. Similarly, you know, we had the situation where the council, after a very stringent and very thorough regulatory process, signed off on the plans for Leeds Bradford Airport, and then that got called in my opinion, completely unnecessarily. These factors really do play a really important role when it comes to having the right conditions to invest, and targets are useless without support. We talked about access to finance and advice. That's all very important, of course. And business representative groups like the CBI and like us at the Chamber, we can play a role. We've got benchmarking tools on our website that you can look at, and you can look at things like ESG, but we can share best practice and be a convener. But there needs to be, I think, more work with the public sector, particularly when it comes to engaging smaller employers. Even in good times, they feel like they're often firefighting. We're always happy to try and help and collaborate, and as I say, share the best way of going about doing things. But that's going to be the really tough area, is getting into those spaces, those smaller employers who, in some cases, particularly things like hospitality, their primary focus is keeping the keys for their business and keeping the lights on, not the method of the power that keeps those lights on. Was that 5 minutes, Eve, or was it too long?
I shouldn't confess, but I wasn't actually keeping a thing to stop you on a stopwatch. But you've laid things out really nicely for Vincent to come in on his presentation, which is around business support, with your concluded comments there, Mark. And so perhaps Vincent can talk us through the support the Combined Authority is able to provide at the moment, and then I'll hand back to you, Chair, for a discussion overall about all of the presentations and contributions. Vincent?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to try and share a little presentation. We'll see whether it works or not. Oh, I've lost you. What? Can you see that?
We can see that you're sharing. Yes, we can see that.
Yeah, okay. It's done something funny to me though, so right, okay. I can't see most of you at the moment, so please shout up if there's any issues. So you should hopefully be able to see an introductory screen showing that I am the Programme Lead for Clean Growth and Innovation at the Combined Authority. Hopefully, if we can get this working. So I'm part of the Growth Hub team within the Combined Authority. Has that slide moved on for all of you? Yeah, good. So we work as a network, as I'm sure hopefully most of you are aware. We work as a network across the whole region with local growth managers based in each of the local authority areas. So we've got a good team in Leeds that we work very closely with, and we offer support through a gateway, the West Yorkshire Business and Skills Gateway, across a whole range of areas, some of which are just highlighted on that slide. In particular around sustainability, we've been running programs for the last 6 years, sorry. Well, it's more now, 7 years since 2016, around resource efficiency and energy efficiency. And I've just thrown some stats up there for figures in Leeds specifically over that time, just showing some of the numbers that we've supported in terms of small businesses. The most recent being our emergency grants that we had out in this last sort of between December and June this year, to support very small businesses, less than 50 staff, with access to support to replace things like boilers and lights and solar panels and that type of stuff, to try and help them tackle the cost of living or the cost of doing business crisis. So the final figures in Leeds we've not yet rattled out, but there's just under £500,000 of grants across the region a large proportion of that went in Leeds, and something like 50% of that went to retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. So businesses that we'd not really dealt with across the two previous main ERDF funded programs that we'd run. So that was quite good for us, sort of getting into those smaller businesses. I think, as Mark said, the types of businesses that are most interested in just keeping their keeping the keys to the building, really. So that was investment in energy efficiency to help them reduce the cost of doing business, basically. Why is it all important, and how has this shaped our current programme of main support that we've got? As you've pointed out, we have a net zero target by 2038 within West Yorkshire, and within the region, 99% plus of the 95,000 regional businesses are SMEs. So our focus is on SME business support, and SMEs, of course, make up the majority of large company supply chains. So there's a close link to emissions across the whole piece, really, whether it's SME or large company. And SMEs themselves can't account. There's some figures suggest that they account for about 50% of all business-driven emissions. So helping businesses, small businesses, to deal with emissions and environmental sustainability is a key strategy for us. On the right-hand side, I think Mark's already pulled out some similar sorts of points. The things that are preventing SMEs from taking action: skills and knowledge, lack of funds, lack of time. That hasn't changed in all the years that I've been working on these programs now. Seems to be fairly consistent as the top three things that stop small businesses. Whichever survey you do, whether it's FSB or British Business Bank, those three always come out on top. The second row of stats there are interesting for us in terms of taking greater climate action, because that's where we start to talk about having the tools for measuring and monitoring, having financial support, and having a network of peers, which has helped to drive some of the sort of aspects of where we're going with our new programme. So in terms of business sustainability support specifically within West Yorkshire, the new programme runs to March 2026, and we're trying to avoid this sort of carbon tunnel vision. Emissions, yes, incredibly important, and a lot of things are linked to that, but we are trying also to have conversations with businesses about a much broader range of environmental and sustainability impacts and resilience impacts. So, we've got to acknowledge that we've got to a point where climate change has happened to us at a level that it will have impact on businesses. So what is the impact on those businesses going to be? How can we help them to be more resilient? For example, we've dealt with a bakery, I think it's actually in Leeds, that had to shut for a number of weeks over the summer this year, because the temperatures during the heat wave got too hot within the bakery that they couldn't operate, basically. So how do you help businesses facing increasing heat waves and things like that, as well as dealing with the sort of pragmatic energy efficiency type issues? So we do try to have a conversation about a whole range of issues as our first step with a contact with a business. And our whole approach to support is based around these three principles of measure, plan, act. So the first point of call is one of our business-facing sustainability managers going in to talk to a business about what their impacts are across that range of aspects, and helping them to understand what those impacts are, and then letting them, helping them to prioritise, basically giving them time in the conversation to say, okay, these are the impacts, what's most important, where can we then help you or try and help you? So we've got some tools that we can offer. We do a free resource efficiency review, which includes energy efficiency and looking at renewable energy and that type of stuff. We will have a carbon footprint calculator on our website for SMEs to use free of charge, a very simple, easy to use calculator that will help with that initial step of sort of measuring. That should be in place within the next month or so, and it will develop over the next couple of months to be more specific. And we will continue with a range of tools for businesses throughout the process, basically. So the next stage, we'll move on to helping businesses to plan. And the idea here is to keep a level of flexibility that means that we can work with the smallest of small businesses up to the largest of small businesses, although there is a focus around a core sort of 10 to 100 employee sort of base. So this plan bit could be a very simple, okay, you've prioritized what's important, what are the next steps, what do you want to do next? Or it could be helping a business to develop a proper full net zero carbon reduction plan to meet the requirements of a supply chain, for example. And this is where it crosses into the ACT a little bit, because we've got some consultancy support to help businesses to do things like those, to help develop those plans in more detail. So if it is a full net zero plan, we can provide some consultancy support via a grant towards doing that. Moving into the ACT element, we've put in place a range of things that we've, through our experience over the last few years, are relevant to businesses. So we try and support businesses around the consultancy, as I say, to develop action plans and systems to improve their environmental sustainability. We've also got a business flood resilience grant pot, which is aimed at helping businesses that are at risk of flood to take proactive action to make their properties more resilient. So it's sort of within curtilage property resilient, flood resilience measures, basically. And we've got a capital grant pot for things like energy efficiency and renewable energy that we can also bring to bear once we've done that sort of initial conversation around measuring and putting together a plan. And then moving into the ACT. We've also got consultancy support around circular economy, which we've had for the last 3 years, and we're carrying on for another 3 years, just to help businesses that are interested in making products or processes or their business model more circular. There are some core eligibility. Has to be an SME business based in West Yorkshire. It's open to any business now that's undertaking economic activity. So where we used to be restricted in terms of retail, hospitality and leisure, we're not now. We can work with, as I say, a small coffee shop up to a large engineering firm. We are sector agnostic, and we operate under the minimum financial assistance public subsidy rules, as a lot of business support does these days. So that's roughly 300,000 of support over a rolling period. So the criteria are a lot more flexible than they used to be under previous programs, and hopefully sort of more accessible to more businesses. And we are seeing that in action. And the last point just brings us around. What we're also trying to do is wrap around that core support with peer support and learning. So we are working, for example, with Sabina Halliday and the Employment and Skills team at Leeds. We've done some pieces of work with her. We've got a series of 3 seminars that we're running to bring in businesses to talk to businesses about what they can do, and also to say what we can do. We're looking to work with partners across the whole of the region to see if there's an interest for first of all, for us to support local sort of green business networks, and then to try and bring something together at a regional level potentially. So there's a bit of work that one of my colleagues has started to do to sort of talk around that. And then various other little bits and pieces around industrial symbiosis. We've done a little bit of research study with a student from Leeds University around industrial symbiosis that we're trying to plug into the work that Leeds and Bradford have done on industrial symbiosis recently as well. So trying to join everything up basically and get more of that peer support. One thing we find from the presentations that we're doing is when we get a business to stand up and say what they've been doing, it brings things to life a lot better. Just to finally sort of finish off, on top of our core support that we've got through that programme, there's a lot of other stuff that is accessible, and our business and skills gateway can help to point people in the right direction. So whether that's the new programmes under UK SPF, which have just been contracted, there'll be a few new programs coming out with green links in there. So there's one that's around working with low carbon businesses, for example, and helping to develop them and their products for market, but also helping to develop the market for those products. That's just an example. things like Made Smarter, which I'm sure you're aware of, is around digitalisation and stuff, which is closely linked to sustainability. And then my misspelt investment fund there, sorry, which is focused on green investments, plus a whole range of other stuff through net zero innovation grants and green business skills support and all sorts of stuff. So there is a lot of support, and it's basically just getting that message out. And that's just my final slide, so I'll stop sharing and hand back to you.
Thanks, Vincent. So, Chair, over to you for. And we're here to try and answer any question that anyone's got across any of those presentations. And I'm not a tech expert, but I do know a bit about the digital sector, although I can't promise to answer any questions you had about Matty's presentation.
Thank you, and thank you so much for putting that together for us, Eve. I'm sure an awful lot of work went into making that happen, and thank you to everybody who presented, and I'm sure a lot of work went in on your behalf as well, and it's been really informative. Would you like to raise your hands if you have any questions, please? Okay, thank you. So let's start with Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for those presentations. They were very, very good. Yeah, a question I'd like to put probably to either of the marks relates to my understanding regards unemployment in the Leeds regional area is pretty low. The last number I saw was something like 2.5% unemployment. Is that causing any issues with skill supply to businesses in the area?
Want to go first, Mark?
I was going to say, which of us is going to take that? I don't think we should.
Mark?
But I don't know if you'd agree with this, other Mark, but you can never look at low unemployment as a negative thing. I don't think that it's the lack of bodies that's available. I think it's the lack of skills that's an issue. I don't think it's the lack of personnel coming forward. It's the 2.5% that are unemployed. They've not got the skills that are just sitting at home that our businesses are desperate for. The skills aren't in the region full stop, or they're in short supply in the region full stop. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Mark.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think there is a big skills mismatch across the country, actually. It's yeah, I don't know how we solve it, but certainly need something we need to look at.
If I may come in, Chair, so what I would add is I think when you're seeing an economy that's changing at the pace that it is changing with sort of digital transformation and the transition to net zero, that's a challenge for all economies. Is that how that pace of change, how quickly can you make sure that your workforce is upskilling, reskilling, moving into where those jobs are? So the idea of the future talent plan and bringing employers and skills providers together is to try and get on the front foot with some of that. And we've made some really good progress with the digital sector and some great collaboration, and the work we've been doing on green skills is a bit further behind, but I'm confident that we've got some good relationships in the city to be able to try and tackle it. One of the characteristic things about the unemployment numbers, just to be mindful of, is that of those that are sort of claiming unemployment benefit, a number of them are still in work. So you've got, I think the figure's 37%-ish. Yes, it is. It's about 29,000 people in Leeds that are claiming UC that are in work. So there is a sort of issue there with low pay, which, you know, we kind of know, which is one of the reasons for us driving inclusive growth and thinking about how we can support those people that are in those types of jobs to be able to upskill into some of the jobs we've been talking about in the new and emerging areas of the economy.
I think there's another piece as well, which is how education is delivered and how skills training is delivered, because we seem to be wedded to 2- and 3-year programs when, you know, as one employer once said to me on training, just enough and just in time, which read into that what you will. And I think, is there an opportunity to, I know DfE are starting to listen on things like modular learning. So ultimately there's that mismatch. Businesses just want the skills, employees want employees want a qualification, and the two seem to be at odds with each other. They shouldn't be, but they are at the moment.
I can definitely back up what Mark's saying from the work we've been doing on LSIPs. The amount of employees and employers that want to essentially do courses on their phone during the lunch hour or on an evening at night. They don't want to go and sit in a classroom or even sit on a Zoom call. They want to do it at their own pace and leisure. Sounds like a bit of a cop-out to me for someone like me who spent a lot of time in lecture theatres and all the rest of it. But that's the way people learn now, especially younger people. If you think about the transition that happened, kids, grandkids and nieces and nephews, etc., during lockdown, they've become accustomed to learning in a very different way. Maybe that's something to be embraced.
There's also market drivers as well. So the digital sector has created a market for boot camps in the city. So we see quite a lot of very good providers actually offering a boot camp model where there's a shortage of skills in the sector. So you do like a 12-week boot camp around a particular skill set. And we've actually just employed someone in Fiona's team, in the economic policy team, who's done a boot camp with Generation UK on data science and is going to work for the council to help us looking at our economic data, and she was working in healthcare before. So there's an interesting kind of market thing about skills providers responding to the economy change, the economic change as well.
I'd agree with that. Just to add to that, if I may, which is I'm speaking to companies that have engaged on the boot camps, digital boot camps. What they also say to me is it tends to attract a different type of individual. They probably come from perhaps not the traditional backgrounds. They probably got a bit of life experience. When you speak to data companies or one of the first things they say, what we need are people that can solve problems, that can communicate and work in teams. And traditional training courses don't necessarily go into that sort of thing. Sometimes not even recognised. And then the other bit, I guess, with 12-week boot camps is that if you're spending 3 years doing an IT degree, the technology might not be as up to date as perhaps industry is looking for, but I think we know that, don't we?
Thank you for those answers. Councillor Foster, did you want to come back, or do you have any other questions?
Yeah, please, I would, because that goes perfectly into the next question, and it kind of relates to the education system that we're using now, and we're now directing so many people through university education. Like you say, the skills are almost redundant by the time they come out of it. Are you seeing companies moving away from graduate recruitment and more to like apprenticeships and in-house training then?
Yeah, do you want me to jump in, Mark?
Yeah, you go first. Well,
certainly, and Eve knows this, I need to declare an interest that I'm a governor of a school in Leeds that's doing really good stuff. And what we're seeing there is that because that I used to call them soft skills, they're life skills, because that's embedded in the curriculum, these young people are far more employable. And actually what we're finding is, particularly in engineering and manufacturing, which what this school supports, a high percentage going on to degree apprenticeships, which is, it's really good for some of these young people. Nobody in their family has ever been to university, and they're going on to degree apprenticeships. So I think there is a bit of that. I think there is another bigger issue around we just don't have enough people with the right skills, and do we need to review the immigration system? But that's probably a can of worms I'll just leave to one side for now. Mark, did you want to?
I definitely support all of that, and it's wider ranging as well, Councillor, because certainly I found with certainly my previous career, a lot of professional services firms were shifting away from just hiring, when it came to trainees, graduates. They were doing this for a reason, because all the graduates they were getting were coming from Russell Group universities with 2-1 or above. They all had received pronunciation backgrounds, and the entrepreneurs they were going out to visit to talk about whatever it was, their audit, etc., just couldn't relate with them as well, because they didn't have a regional accent, for example, or they didn't have perhaps lived experience of starting a business. And so they've been going more down the apprenticeship route to try and solve that issue. And that's been going on for quite a while now. That's been going on for more than sort of 5, 6, 7, but probably getting on for 10 years. And I think that'll probably continue as we go forward. I'm not completely discrediting or discounting the university experience. You learn more than skills or acquiring knowledge. You learn processes and skills, and totally one, in fact, I utterly endorse Mark's recharacterization of soft skills as life skills. You know, going to talk to a stranger that you've never spoken to before, or going to have a meeting with people you don't know, or picking up the phone. These are all things that you'll kind of get as part of a further education course that you might not necessarily get in real life. And these are the things that employers complain about the most when they take on people at entry level.
Yeah, great feedback. Thanks for that.
Welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else like to ask a question of any of our panelists? So you have to put your electronic hand up if you do.
Could I ask a question, Councillor? We've got Vincent on the call, and I don't think there's a lack of support out there. I just think there's a lack of awareness of the support. I'm just thinking, how can we work with you, Combined Authority and others? How can we help? Because, and I'm sure Mark will say the same thing. You know, we speak to lots of companies looking for support that don't know where to go, and you know, yet there's great opportunities here. There's, you know, the Combined Authority is doing some fantastic work in this space. How do we make more people aware of it? That would be my plea. And I guess linked to that would be, you know, we saw in Vincent's slides over the last 7 years, there's been 3 different programs with 3 different names. We as businesses get confused.
Do you want to come in on that, Vincent, please?
Yeah, I'll deal with the second part first, because we are actively trying to move away from, as much as we can, program names. So, for example, the new support I didn't refer to as the business sustainability program or whatever. It is the business sustainability support that we can offer through West Yorkshire Business and Skills. Basically, we are now trying to sort of make everything part of, struggling at the moment because we're in the middle of a rebrand and all that sort of stuff. But you know, we are at present West Yorkshire Business and Skills, and there's sustainability support you can get from there. So we're trying to move away from program kind of stuff and make it a more ongoing, just talk to us about what support you might want. And if you come to us saying I want to become net zero, the support for you. If you come to us saying, you know, I want to innovate and develop new products, the support for you. It's just coming to us, I guess, and talking to us. And in terms of working closely with people like yourselves, you know, we try and do that partly through the support network, the SME support network that we've got, that I think hopefully your teams are invited to in the TEND, which is sort of tries to bring together everybody in the region that's involved in supporting SMEs once every 3 months, I think, or something like that. So that we're making people aware of what's happening, and then hopefully they're going away and disseminating that amongst members and whatever else. And we do try and work as well more directly with different organisations as well. So if you want to do something and you know, you want a presence from us to come and talk about what support there is from West Yorkshire Business and Skills, there'll always be somebody that can do that as part of if you're putting on a seminar or something. We can always be there, or even have a stand there, or you know, if there's like an exhibition space or whatever, we're happy to get people along to things. We've done stuff with people like Lloyds Bank. We've done the events for their businesses and stuff like that. We're always happy to sort of support and get the message out through the stuff that you're already doing. And equally, we're you know, if the stuff that you're doing in this space, where he's equally happy to say, do you know that you can also get this support from the chambers or CBI or FSB or wherever. If we're aware of what's going on, then we can sort of refer back into those types of things as well.
It's really good to hear. Thank you for that, Vincent.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody else? Okay, in that case, can I come in with some of my own then, please? So the first one was looking at the idea of developing green skills, and I know that's something that's come up quite a bit. And one of the things that is often a problem is identifying what green skills are. And I think, was it Eve, you mentioned that it, you know, if you don't know what a heat pump engineer is, then you're very unlikely to consider a career in it. And there's an awful lot of evidence that says that young people tend to get a lot of their career ideas from family members, and therefore that kind of limits their scope if we're looking at new skills. But one source of information that isn't an out-of-date family member is a careers advisor, and certainly most high schools and colleges have careers advisors in them. Are you doing any work with careers advisor networks to kind of upskill the careers advisors about the green skills agenda?
So two things, Councillor Dye. So first of all, we work. We obviously have a service that we provide across Leeds schools around careers advice, and that is focused on our key priority areas. So as we continue to build our work with partners across the sector, we'll continue to add to that in terms of the careers advice. It's not a mandatory service, so not every school in Leeds necessarily taps into it. That's the only thing, obviously, with the way that schools are structured, but it is a good service provision from our employment and skills team. We also partner with the AHEAD partnership, who a number of you will know, who operate in that space between employers and schools. And they have a whole programme around green skills, where they've got employers working with them, including organisations like Situ. In fact, I went to support one of the events that they ran for schools at the Yorkshire Housing offices in part of Situ Development before they had a fire recently, sadly. But there was a great event there. We were working with young people, looking at a whole range of areas, which was part of that programme of work. So looking to establish that as a programme that they'll run for a number of years, in the same way as they have a programme called Growing Talent Digital Leeds as well. But inevitably we'll need to keep at it, you know, because we need to keep, as we're developing our relationships with skills providers and employers, we need to keep refreshing the advice that we're giving and improving the connections that we've got as we go. I think Mark Caskey wanted to come in as well. You were indicating, Mark.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Eve. And it was just to kind of introduce a thought to the process, because I hear on an almost daily basis about the concept of green skills, and I just kind of want to challenge what that is, because green skills can be applied to virtually every single occupation there is. I got solar panels put on my roof about 4 years ago. The guy that put those on and his assistant, they didn't have green. He was an electrician and an installer. The people building the wind turbines out at Saltend and Hull, they're engineers. You know, you can apply green skills to virtually everything, and I think that would be a really good way of a prism to look through, especially when you're dealing with young people that might be a bit more environmentally engaged. I mean, maybe if you're drilling for fossil fuels in the North Sea, it's not a green skill, but most are. Working in human resources is a green skill. You're going to be encouraging active travel. You're going to be looking at electric car points in your car park. I think green skills, you should try and almost apply that to rather than kind of siloing it off, because it doesn't exist.
The way I've spoken about it before at scrutiny, Councillor Dye, is that when you think about it, if you parallel it with digital, if you think about digital and technology, there are digital and technology specialists who have deep expertise in that area, who may actually work in either a digital business or a non-digital business, but in a digital function. So then there are digital skills that we all need to have in our jobs because of the digital transformation of the economy. And I think from the point of view of the economic transition we're going through to be able to kind of live in a way where we're kind of at one with the planet, we're going to have people who have deep knowledge and expertise in sustainability, like Matty, who we heard from, like Polly. But then we're going to have to also, everybody is going to have a level of skills in their jobs, because their job is going to change to some degree as a result of the need to transition. So I think that's quite a helpful way of thinking about it. And as we're doing the work through economic development and on skills, we'll be looking at both of those things because we have to. So we're looking at both how can we support there to be more people who have really deep expertise in the areas where it's needed, but how can we make sure that the whole workforce also has the skills that are going to be needed into the future. So hopefully that's kind of a helpful way of thinking about it.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And actually, that was one of the things that came out of the AHEAD partnership work, wasn't it? The kind of the whole definition of green skills. And I think Mark's point is a valid one. We'd probably be better off defining the skills that are not green, and then everything else is just skills, rather than looking at it in, as you say, that siloing it in a particular box. But I think it is something really important for young people to get those skills, particularly in developing a lot of the technologies that we're going to need.
Could I just add, sorry, Councillor, could I just add a point? And I guess it's a plea to everybody on the call. If you're speaking to businesses who are concerned about trying to find the right skills, encourage them to go and talk to their local schools, because businesses working with young people has a massive impact. The OECD do a research paper every few years on this, and I think it's something like 2 or 3 interventions at school age from businesses has massive impact on life outcomes, and it's all about bringing that curriculum to life. And I think, you know, on the whole skills agenda, but certainly on the green skills, Mark's absolutely right. Young people are really quite passionate about this. And so actually, if you can get employers going in and saying, you know, this is what we do, this is how we do it, it suddenly brings that classroom to life. You suddenly realise, you know, why are you learning Pythagoras' theorem? I'm never going to use this. Well, actually, you know, if you want to be a surveyor, you will be using it. You just don't know you're using it. So I think it's that bringing it to life, and employers have a really big role to play in that.
Can I just echo that? I mean, that's hugely, hugely important, and possibly something for a different hat that I wore for 30 years. But I was a teacher for 30 years, and I actually ran for several years the Leeds Careers Practitioners Network. And that's such an important thing. In fact, it was one of the Gatsby benchmarks that was really, really hard to achieve, to get employers into schools. And the difference it made to young people to listen to somebody with lived experience who could say, this is what I do on a daily basis, was just huge. It really was, rather than some crusty old teachers like myself standing up and saying you should develop these important skills. Young people would just kind of sit up and say, yeah, that's true, actually. There's a real person telling us it, rather than one of the teachers we hear from every day. So yeah, please, please, please encourage all businesses you know to get into schools. I think that's so important. Okay, and anybody else prompted to ask a question, or shall I carry on? Okay, I'll carry on then. So one of mine specifically, Eve, I think is for you really, and it's concerning the social progress index. So I was having a look at that before today's meeting, and looking at the indicators that are used, and wondering if there's any scope to introduce a specific kind of climate indicator. I do appreciate that it's limited by the data that's collectible, but wondering whether we could collect data on PSDS or recycling or active travel, EPC ratings, tree planting, EV charging. Is there some data we could capture from that?
Yeah, so I'll just give you a really high level context and then I'll pass across to Fiona. So just as this isn't so much directed at you, Chair, but just general context, the Social Progress Index has some standardisation to it because it's an international index. So the headlines are the same for any place that adopts it, but what you can decide locally is the specific indicators that you pick. And the manner in which you pick those indicators is based usually on the quality of data that you have in your particular area, because you need it to have at least 3 years worth of data. You need it to be reliable data. And so the reason why we have the set of indicators we started with is because we looked at a much wider range of indicators and we worked on the quality and availability of the data set to get to what we started with in the first version. But I know that Fiona and the team have been looking at adding to the data and enhancing it, so I'll pass to Fiona at that point.
Hi, Katie. Just to let you know that the next version of the SPI is going to be out at the end of October, and we're just working through just the final stages of that to make sure it's out there and it's available. There was loads of environmental indicators. We've got a wish list, and as Eve said, we were narrowing it down in terms of what we can do, we know what data is available. What we would like to do is a bit of a forward program, actually, of what data can we collect, what do people really want, and how can we get to some of that. And it's just actually having the resource and the time in place to be able to do some of that. We've certainly had conversations with Polly's team and others along the way. Tree planting was something we did want to include last time but weren't able to, and I don't think we've quite got enough data to do it this time. But the next time, I'm hopeful that we should get that. The big one that we did want to include from an environmental perspective was around air quality. And again, it's a data issue around that, but we'll continue to work. And I think we do need a better sort of overarching sort of data collection strategy around all of these things to be able to make sure that we can reuse things and we can actually get what people need. And I'm very happy to work with Polly's team around identifying some new indicators to go on, but it obviously won't be for this version because it's going to be out in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you for that. That's good to know. Is that a hand going up, Councillor Foster, with another question?
Please, yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because that touches on something that's quite close to my heart, and that's with the SPI scheme that we're using. Is anybody looking at any kind of correlation with the amenity access score map? I've said this before. If you overlay the SPI map and the amenity access map, they almost match up perfectly, with the most deprived areas on the SPI scheme actually being the areas with the best access to amenities. Now, I haven't gone into any great detail, but you can literally overlay the two city maps and they match up perfectly. So we're saying that the places that have got the lowest SPI score have actually got probably the best access to amenities. Is anybody looking into that? Because, that puzzles me on what's going on there.
So the SPI doesn't just look at one factor. So when you will, if you're looking at access to green space, you will be able to, and you compared kind of a central ward, say Middleton Park, that has access to the green space and so on, it might do better than another area in one aspect, but not in other areas. And there's kind of some web-based kind of diagrams that you can look at where you can play around and you can compare ward with ward and look at the different dynamics. It's difficult to explain it without showing you the visual, but inevitably, you're right, you're going to have some areas that are doing really well on access to amenities and green space, but they'll be doing probably less well on other areas, like potentially educational, the attainment and so on. So Fiona, I'm probably not explaining it brilliantly. You might be better than me, but that I think is, you're getting those nuances in the SPI rather than looking at one particular area.
I think you're right. It's the SPI is more on people outcomes, I guess.
Yeah.
This brings me back to the other argument that I've used, and that is you tend to find that the poor scoring SPI communities are probably the areas with high density, low cost housing. So it attracts a certain sort of person. People on low incomes will move there. So if you're measuring low income as a concern, those people that move into the house on a low income in a low SPI scoring area, it may be they're a young couple, they're just starting off. So they get a promotion, they get a couple of pay rises, things get better. And what's the first thing they do is they move out of that area into a better area with a better scoring SPI index. And then another low earning family or individual will move back into and take up that place. So what I'm saying is, the certain elements you're looking at will never change. those areas will always have the people with the lowest earnings, because that's where the cheapest housing is. That's just one example. Health could be another one. I guess people that are substance dependent, alcoholics, people that may be through that type of issue, they can't work, they're on benefits. Again, they're going to live in low cost housing areas, but they can also have poor health. Now, it may be they come off the drugs, the dependency, they go and get a job, and just as I've said, they'll move out, and then other people with dependencies will move in. So what I'm saying is, you can almost, I could draw you the map and say it will be exactly the same in 10 years from now. The only thing you could do is knock the houses down, because, you know, 2 up, 2 down, back to backs are never going to be able, you're never going to be able to improve the property to the point where it's going to be as attractive to people to want to live in than maybe a semi or a detached in the outer areas. So I guess I'm saying I have concerns that perpetually using the SPI is just going to keep telling you the same thing, and it's going to prioritise the same communities, and on the flip side, it's going to continually disadvantage the same communities.
I've heard your concerns before, Councillor, at scrutiny, and I completely understand the point you're making about there are certain things that are very, very difficult for us to change as a council, particularly given the resources that we have now compared to the resources we might have had in the past, or some of the powers. But I would say that the SPI doesn't just lend you to very high level assumptions about one ward that's typically in a more disadvantaged area versus more affluent area. There are nuances when you look at more affluent wards as well, about areas where there are things that we need to drill down into and understand and address. So there's it's not I think quite so black and white, and I think we should be careful that we don't use it as a tool in that way. And it's also how the development that Fiona and the team are doing is also going to allow us to drill down to another level of geographic detail as well, which will help us be able to just look at subtleties within wards too, because we do know, for example, that there are some people that live in Wetherby that are living in difficult circumstances, for example, that might not pop up when you're looking at a ward level view. So I'm confident that as we go together on this journey developing the SPI, we will have a great tool there that's helping us to have exactly this type of conversation to really make sure we're understanding what those nuances are.
Thank you, Eve. Anybody else being prompted to come in with a question? Okay, is that a legacy hand, Councillor Foster? Yes, it is. Okay, right. In that case, can I just come in with 2 more questions of my own, please? One of them, Eve, is about the update, and it mentions workspaces and encouraging startup spaces outside of the city centre. And the reason I'm interested in that is I think that really supports the climate agenda in terms of active travel and things like that. I wondered if you had any details about what kind of work is involved in that.
Yeah, so we were able to use a small amount of money that we had left from the Tech Hub grant that we got in 2014-15. It was before I joined the council, so if I'm getting the day, I think it was 2015, to provide some small grants to support that development, but there was a very small amount of money. So all that's done is we illustrate a process and what's possible should we be in a position where we've got more capital that we can deploy in that way. And at the moment we don't. So we've tested a model and we're able to apply some grants, but until we're in a position where we've got more capital or funds available to us, we can't go any further. But it does mean there's a model there if external funding becomes available, for example, that we can apply. I don't know, Fiona, if you want to add anything, because it's your team that oversaw that process, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we probably, if we're thinking about in terms of resources, I think it's not just in terms of, it's actually having some time and some people to actually work with businesses and third sector organisations and providers out there to actually develop the pipeline, because actually it's about getting people the project through as well. So it's not just the money to give people, it's actually the money to work with some of those communities and those groups in order to help them get into a place where they could then develop those spaces more effectively.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Then in that case, the last one from me is something that is mentioned in the update about ABCD. And I just wondered, it kind of, when I read it, it took me back to the working group that Councillor Anderson chairs. And we had a really interesting discussion about community growing and how difficult that can often be, and how good it would be to be able to look at ways of making spaces available for things like that, which is really at the heart of the ABCD agenda, just enabling communities to set up their own projects. And there's certainly a large appetite for setting up kind of climate related benefits, beneficial projects. And it can be really hard to find a space to be allowed to use a space. We're certainly having issues at the moment with extending the composting pilot that's been going on across the city. So I don't know whether you could wave a magic wand or whether you have any ideas that would help us on that agenda, but it's just, it just seems to be a real barrier.
Yeah, so it probably cuts across into other officers' remits and areas of responsibility, Councillor Dyke. I'm happy to take it away because I think there's something interesting we could explore with open innovations, actually, about putting some open data out, essentially about spaces that businesses or other organisations are prepared to provide. And we've also got the Business Anchors Network that we've just launched, and the overall Anchors Network. So I'm happy to go away and reflect on that, because it may be that through a number of routes we could do something that could help. The Anchors, for example, working together, we could potentially just publish an open list of assets that are available for people to support local projects in different places. But I'm making it sound easy when it's probably a bit harder than that, because I don't do asset management. But happy to take away and have a bit of a think about that and see if there's something we can do, definitely.
Thank you. That would be really good, because it is something, as I say, that we've discussed quite recently. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, so it looks like we are bringing that item to a close. So can I once again thank everybody who took the time to present to us and answer the questions, and Eve again for putting it all together. I really do appreciate that. So thank you very much.
For having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so that brings us on to the final item of the afternoon, which is the date and time of the next meeting, Monday, 27th of November at 2 p.m. And I do believe we are meeting in person at Civic on that meeting. Cassie's nodding, so that must be true. So thank you very much. So look forward to seeing you all in person, and thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions, and you are free to go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.